Okay, so the last trip that I did on my own was back in 2019. So I was 60 years of age, 59, 60 years of age. And the first part of that was that I wanted to stop in Czech Republic, close to a village called Lidice, which is where a tragedy in World War II occurred. The Nazis decimated the whole of a village, and the story had sort of been passed on to me by my father, who had visited it literally just after World War II. He had visited the village, and he passed on this story, and it sort of was a story that dragged me back there. I'd been twice before, and it had really hit me as a story. If you ever got the opportunity to watch the film Lidice, or if you have watched Anthropoid, a recent film, I think that was made only in 2016, somewhere around there, that tells the story of the assassination of Heydrich and the tragedy and the massacre in Lidice actually happened as a result of the Czechs assassinating Heydrich, so it's all integrated into the same story. So, randomly, I needed to stay somewhere close to that village, and I happened upon an Airbnb in a beautiful little village called Budyně nad Odí, which a few years later meant that I've ended up living there and married to the said young lady who owned the Airbnb. So there's a little part of romance for you. So, not saying that to every single bloke, get on a motorbike and start riding through central and eastern Germany and you'll end up meeting your future wife. No, not suggesting that for 1 second. But it happened to me, so whatever. It's good. So what actually happened on that trip was I initially was staying just one night in the Airbnb with my wife-to-be, Gina. At the time, it was just going to be one night, but we talked and talked and talked on that first evening. She was very interested that I was interested in history of her country, and she was able to pass on stories to me, that places that I didn't know anything about. So I ended up staying 3 nights in total. And that sort of started our, what would have only literally been a friendship and nothing else, but through the powers of Facebook and the powers of being able to stay in contact through the likes of Messenger, WhatsApp and so on. Gina spoke several languages, and therefore she was able to say, listen, if you get stuck in Russia or wherever and you need someone to translate something for you, contact me. And the beauty of that was that we then stayed in contact. No flirting, no nothing like that at all in the initial stages. It was just very kind of her to do exactly that. But then it developed from there, and I ended up coming back to the Czech Republic on the way home from that trip and staying about a week, and that's when we started seeing each other. And then pre-COVID, what was happening up to COVID was that I was flying over there once a month, staying over there for a week, coming back. Airports were our favourite place and our least favourite place. When I arrived, airports were absolutely great. 1 week later, suddenly the week had flown by and I'm back on a plane leaving. So we had a real love-hate relationship with airports at that time. And then when COVID kicked in, suddenly we were unable to travel. And then Gina made the decision to move over to UK, which she did. And the rest is history. A couple of years ago, we got married, and there we go. Happy ending. So tell you a few little bits about that story, about what actually happened immediately after I had left Czech Republic and after I'd met Gina. Through Facebook, I've now got like 5,000 followers, and I've encouraged that right the way through, because it's meant that I've got people who can help in different countries, and it wasn't planned that way, but it just happened. So I left Czech Republic and headed north up through Poland, and at the time I was on an Africa Twin, and there was an Africa Twin motorcycle group on Facebook, and this guy in Poland contacted me and said, hey, I see that you're in Czech Republic and you've just said that you're heading up towards Finland, so on that basis you're going to come past my place in Poland, northern Poland. Please let's meet up. So we met up. His English was minimal. My Polish is non-existent, so there's a bit of a struggle to communicate, but nevertheless he said to me, listen, stay overnight. My wife will be more than happy if you come and be our guest, and that's what I did. And it was Facebook plus motorcycles that brought the two of us together. We've remained very close mates. Really, real cool story from there. So then the next day, on this, what was a mammoth trip in mileage terms as well, the next day after Poland, headed up to Lithuania. In Lithuania, I decided I was going to stay in a hotel. It was all sort of last-minute stuff. It was getting late afternoon. I didn't have the real chance to look into an Airbnb, so I just thought, oh, do you know what? The easiest cop was just literally just go and get booked into a hotel. So I arrived in a city called Kaunas, a very large town city called Kaunas, and went into a hotel reception area and said, can I please have a room for tonight? She looked at me completely perplexed and said, no, and you won't get a room in any hotel in Kaunas for this evening. You're going to be staying a number of miles away. And I went, why? What's happening in Kaunas tonight? And she said, Sting's in concert. I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. Wonder if I can get a ticket for Sting. But in the meantime, I've got a problem with where am I going to stay. Now, again, through biker affinity groups, two guys, Lithuanians, had already contacted me, and because they were following the trip, and they said, right, if you're coming through our country, if you have any difficulties, contact us. So I contacted them and said to them, listen, Sting is on this evening. I'm struggling to find somewhere to stay. Don't know if you can help. If you can, fantastic. Half an hour later, or an hour later it was, they turned up on two motorbikes and said, okay, firstly, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I probably want to go and see Sting tonight, to be honest, if I can, if I can get tickets. But in the meantime, I need somewhere to stay. So they took me a bit of a tour around Kaunas itself, which was great. I was very interested to see their insight. Non-tourist showed me the real Kaunas, which I found fascinating. Nice city. Lithuania is a beautiful country. And then off we went out into the countryside, 10 or 15 miles away, came across a little hotel. They were able to communicate with the owner, who didn't speak any English at all, and wham, bam, there it was, sorted out at a hotel room for the night. By complete coincidence, they were then going home, the two biker friends, but by coincidence, there was four people just about to leave the hotel as I was booking in, and they didn't speak any English at all, but they had asked for a taxi to go to the Sting concert. So my two friends on the bikes overheard this, said to me, listen, these lot are going to the Sting concert. Do you want to go with them, because they're going to get a taxi and he's going to be here in about 10 minutes? And I went, yeah, definitely. I said, I'm bound to be able to get one ticket, even if it's a sellout, somebody doesn't turn up, whatever. There's always a reason why you can get your hands on one ticket. So fantastic. The next thing is, 5 minutes later, I'm in the back of this taxi with 3 people who don't speak a word of English. They were Russians. They were from Kaliningrad. And it was quite bizarre, really, because I'm sort of in this taxi thinking, well, I hope we're going to... It was a high risk. I hope we're going to a concert. Do I really know the directions back to this hotel? Have I bothered to actually keep a note of the hotel? And I'm sitting in a taxi where nobody speaks English. There were moments when I look back, I think to myself, they probably were high risk. They didn't feel high risk. I felt like I could trust people. There were people that I came across on different trips that I avoided. And I think I mentioned this on a previous programme. If someone approached me, girl, woman, man, boy, it made me suspicious. Why did they come? It made me think twice. Whereas if I approached somebody, then I always felt, well, 98% of the population are good guys, 2% are baddies. So it's pure down bad luck if I just happen to have picked on a baddie. And I probably haven't picked on a baddie, I've picked on a goodie. So that's how I felt with this. It was a coincidence. They were going in a taxi. They were going to the concerts. They seemed like fun. They were only young. They were in their mid-20s, maybe mid-20s to 30, somewhere around there. There's a girl with them, which transpired to be one of the lads' wives. So when I look back, it wasn't high risk. The high risk part was that I genuinely hadn't paid any attention to where I was in the hotel. And we were miles away. And if I lost these in the concert, because at that stage I assumed it was all-seater, and I assumed that everybody had a numbered seat. So there was a chance that I wouldn't hook up with this lot afterwards. So I was going to have to make sure that I got the name of the hotel and knew how to get a taxi. 15,000 people coming out of a stadium, where are you going to get a taxi? But there was a few things that were going through my mind thinking, this isn't going to be logistically easy, but we'll play it by ear. Anyway, as we got there, it transpired that they had standing tickets, and I was able to communicate to them, no ticket. I have no ticket, okay? Which I remember them repeating on numerous occasions. Johnny, no ticket. Johnny, no ticket. So they went to the reception area, even though we were in Lithuania, they were Russian, very similar language. So they were able to communicate saying, can this guy have a standing ticket? I bought my standing ticket for the princely price of £20. And I actually thought to myself then, do you know, a Sting concert in Manchester on the same tour was something like 80 quid. And yet he was in Lithuania and it's only £20 a ticket. It just made me think, well, is financially, it's obvious that Sting's going to make a hell of a lot more out of a more expensively priced ticket in UK. Is he doing Lithuania out of kindness, or am I missing something somewhere along the line? Don't really understand that. Still don't understand the logistics of the pricing of that. But anyway, £20, I get my ticket, and I'm with them then, which is great. So as long as I don't lose them in the concert, we're going to come out and we're going to get a taxi and everything's going to be fine. And that's exactly what happened. But what also happened was they were great fun, and I had a phenomenal night. Absolutely brilliant. Not massive Sting fan. I can take him, I can leave him, but he was brilliant in concert. And what they loved more than anything else was I knew the words to his songs. They didn't because of the language. They know the tunes, but they didn't know the words. But they were absolutely thrilled that I could virtually sing all of his big hits anyway. And it was a great night. They were really good fun. Very sadly, at the moment, we're unable to get visas into Russia, and we're unable to get visas, therefore, into Kaliningrad. And Kaliningrad is between Poland and Lithuania. So it's actually only about 700 miles away from where we live in Czech Republic. And I want to go and hook up with them and meet them. And as soon as things change and we can get a visa into there, that's exactly what they would do. Great night. They made me feel very, very welcome. They were half my age, but we had a fantastic, load of fun evening. Absolutely brilliant. Headed off after that, up through Latvia, Estonia, then jumped on a ferry, and then I'm in Helsinki. Very funny story in Helsinki. Riding round Helsinki, following morning, I'm staying there overnight. And I came round a corner, and it was two roads leading into a one-way street. So you had a road coming from one direction, I'm on this direction, and we're both going into a one-way street. I was pretty vague, didn't really know the area, bang in the middle of city centre this is. And as I turned right, there was a van that cut literally in front of me. I had to straighten up. He just didn't stop. He probably had the right of way. I don't know that to this day. But anyway, I had to avoid him. And as I avoided him, so I went around the back of the van, I had to straighten up and couldn't get around the corner then. In the split second that I saw it, I rode into what I thought was a bank of sand. That's what it looked like. In a split second, it wasn't sand, it was actually concrete. And thankfully, bike looked after itself. That quite often happens, by the way. Sometimes you can be in a situation where you think, oh, I'm off here. And actually the bikes, especially nowadays, modern bikes, they're actually so finely balanced that it's almost as if you let go and don't fight against them, the bike itself will look after itself. Anyway, what actually physically happened was I went up this little bank, which was very smooth, concrete, looked like a sandbank, but it wasn't. That was only its colour. And I sort of came down around it, almost like the wall of death. That's a big exaggeration, but that sort of thing. And the bike just dump, and I'm back on the road, everything's okay. And in that split second, as I straightened up on the bike, there was a kid with his mother on the other side of the road, and this kid's face was just a picture. It was complete in awe of what I had done. He thought it was planned. It wasn't planned. And it made me laugh. And I'm riding to the end of the road, and I thought to myself, oh, do you know what? That was fun, and to see that kid's face, absolutely brilliant. So I thought, I wonder if I might be lucky. I'll see if there's a block. I turn right, I turn right, I turn right, and sure enough, I'm back there. And this time, I think to myself, I can make a better run at this, and I can actually use this as a wall of death. Again, bear with me, bit of exaggeration here, but the principle was similar, that I could ride the bike up and the bike would be on an angle and I'd be able to hold it there. It was beautifully smooth. It was absolutely perfect. And this kid would still be there, surely. And the kid was still there. So I do it, okay, this time a little bit faster, swerve round there, banking over, absolutely brilliant. Bit of a thrill for me. But the main reason I did it for this kid, absolutely brilliant. Top of the road, policeman, jumps off the pavement, hand in the air. Great. So as quick as anything, I've got my story lined up, and he stops me, and I take my helmet off. His first shock is he's thinking I'm probably an 18-year-old goon, and I'm not an 18-year-old goon. I'm a goon, but I'm a lot older than 18, so he's in shock. Okay, he said, can you explain what you've just done? And I went, yeah, I can explain. I said, what happened was I was coming around the corner and a van cut in front of me and I had no choice. I had to go behind the van. And he said, no. He said, yes. He said, that happened to you the first time. I'm talking about the second time. So he'd actually witnessed what had happened to me the first time, nicely ignored me because it wasn't my fault. But then when I came back around the block and behaved like a bit of an idiot, he thought, enough's enough, and stopped me. Anyway, we had a bit of a giggle. I pointed to the child further back down the road and explained that I only did it for his entertainment. That didn't really work, but he let me off and he said, OK, please be careful in future. Right, the next thing is, that very day, later on that day, I'm at the border from Helsinki into Russia. Now then, different sponsorships I've had over the years, different things that have been given to me, and it's not usually money. It's usually, oil or ear plugs or gloves or stuff. Okay, and one thing that I got was, because I wouldn't have chosen this, was a Guy Martin helmet. Okay, I like Guy Martin, by the way, but I wouldn't have chosen this one had it not been given to me. And the reason I wouldn't have chosen it was multicoloured. It was multicoloured pink. Okay, only Guy Martin can get away with that. And I was aware that I was going to get some strange looks with my pink stroke turquoisey blue helmet. So I get to the border, Helsinki into Russia, and I get the usual, where are you going? I'm going into Russia. Okay, fine. And they're about to let me go through. And then half a mile, 200 metres, whatever, I'm going to then go into Russia. So this first border side of it was leaving Helsinki. And this guy said to me, you're going into Russia on your own, on a motorcycle. I said, correct. And he said, all of that is okay, but are you really going to do that with a pink helmet as well? I said, yeah, this is a bit crazy, isn't it? Yeah, he said, this is completely crazy. So 200 yards later, you're getting into Russia, and the expression on the Russian border, they didn't even, I'm not even sure if they checked my paperwork that much. I think they just looked at the colour of my helmet and just thought, his paperwork is irrelevant. He's not going to survive. This isn't going to go down well at all. So very shortly after that border crossing, which is southernmost part of Finland into Russia, it's probably the busiest border between Finland and Russia. Immediately after that, trust me, I don't know what the name of the place is. A lot of border towns can be rough. A lot of border towns trade between countries, so they're almost like market stalls or street vendors, currency exchanges, which are they're not illegal, but they're close to illegal, So you've got no real towns in close to a border with another country. You would never say, oh, this is picturesque or it's nice, and some are very rough. I can't remember the name of this place, but the first place I hit in Russia, and I was on my way to St. Petersburg. Wow, if I've ever been in a situation where I've thought, what the hell am I doing here, and wanting just to simply turn round and go straight back out, that was a moment. I came down a main road there with my pink helmet and probably forgot that I was wearing a pink helmet. I just looked around and just thought, wow, this is not the right place to stop. And it wasn't. It was really, really, very, really bad. Carried on to St. Petersburg. I had an issue with insurance, or should I say, lack of it. At the border, there was an insurance office, but it was closed when I went through. That usually happens in the evening or overnight, but in a weekend it can be a bit, some of them aren't manned then, but normally these insurance offices are manned between certainly 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. So you become aware that you need to cross the borders during normal day, Monday to Friday, ideally. I did that. I crossed over into Russia at a sensible time, around about lunchtime, and it was midweek, but unfortunately it was closed. So I was aware that I was riding with no insurance, which was not a good thing to be doing in Russia. Even when I eventually would get the insurance sorted out, I also knew it was third party only. So I'm on a very expensive bike, Africa Twin, and the bike itself is not going to be insured for accidental damage, fire, theft, any of that. So you are aware of what you're doing, taking a risk, but a huge risk that I haven't got any insurance, because if I go and cause any damage to somebody else or injure somebody else, Russia's probably not the easiest of countries to explain your way out of that one. Especially if they said to you, and what is your occupation in UK? And you say, I'm an insurance broker. That wouldn't really tie up, would it? Like, that would put me in a worse position than anything else. I should know better. Anyway, went to St. Petersburg, couldn't get the insurance sorted out. Can't really remember why. I'm not sure whether it was... I can't remember. Can't remember what. But it became an even bigger problem. And then I'm heading towards Moscow. And last week I told you about the fortunate thing of, or the brilliance of meeting people and having people offering help. And I had met this guy who was an ex-Soviet Union army officer. I met this guy who just randomly talked to me in the middle of the street because I had a British motorbike and I was in Lithuania. And I told him I was going to Russia. He put me in contact with his friend over in Russia, gave me a phone number and said, if you need anything, you contact him. He's a good guy. He's ex-army, semi-retired. He'll help you. Wow, this guy. Without him, I don't know. I think I would have had to have turned around and just left Russia, which would have broken my heart because I desperately wanted to be... I even had plans to meet up with an ex-Speedway rider a few days later. So I even had people to see, and I desperately wanted to go around Moscow and everywhere else towards Siberia. So fortunately, I make a phone call. I explained to him that I've got an insurance issue. Long story short, he put me in contact with, and this was all logistically really difficult. Russian alphabet is not the same as our alphabet, so therefore road signs are very confusing because you can't read them. Road names are even worse. Everything in their alphabet is impossible for a Western English only speaking person to decipher. It's just it may as well be Arabic or Japanese. It doesn't make any sense and it doesn't help you at all. So there was a lot of logistical problems to finding the right place, finding an office. When I did get to one office, they explained to me that I was actually in the wrong place and needed to go to the other side of the city. And all the time, I'm not insured. So it's stressful. Eventually, I came to a place. This guy, I was able to phone and he was able to speak to these people for me. And they were helpful, except that they couldn't understand why I was wanting insurance from that day. How had I got there? And obviously I didn't want to be saying to them, well, I've got here without insurance. So I think somewhere along the line, there was perhaps a bit of confusion as to who was explaining what. And I think somebody must have made up a story, perhaps it was me, someone, that somehow the bike had been transported perhaps in the back of a van, and here it was now outside, and I now need insurance from this moment onwards. The complication to it was that type of insurance for a foreigner coming into Russia would always be organised at the border, not in the middle of a city centre such as Moscow, for the reason, how did you get here? Anyway, eventually got around the problem, eventually got my paperwork, wasn't expensive, it was 10 or 15 quid, so monetary-wise it was nothing, and big, huge sigh of relief for me from there. I then tootled down towards Tolyatti. So I'm going south now from Moscow. I should mention Moscow if you get the chance to go to Moscow, go to Moscow. What a gorgeous city, fascinating place. The Kremlin, Red Square, all of it. Gorky Park. I mean, it's a wonderful city, and they're lovely, lovely, lovely people, obviously. We have the issues going on at this present time, but nevertheless, the civilians, lovely, lovely people, really helpful. And once you're away from the major cities, they're intrigued as to what the hell you're doing there, why you're there, where you're going, what your plans are. And they're more interested in me than them, but obviously I'm interested in them, so it's a two-way conversation. So heading down towards Toliati, I eventually came across a town where I stopped, and I booked myself into a hotel. The guy immediately recognised I was on a motorbike as I walked into the reception. It was only a small guest housey type hotel. And he spoke good English, and he said, "Is your bike outside?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "It won't be. Follow me." And in that, 2 or 3 minutes, what he meant was, your motorbike will be taken in 2 or 3 minutes. Someone will steal it. So out we went. He directed me round the back of the hotel guest house and found a secure little place for it to be parked in. Well, it wasn't that secure really, but it was a hell of a lot better than being on the main road. So I then crossed the road. I put my stuff in the room, crossed the road, found a little coffee shop, sitting in the coffee shop, minding my own business, perfectly okay. And a guy walks in and sits opposite me. This is a scene straight out of a movie now, but it happened, so I didn't think about a movie at the time. It was only afterwards that I thought, ooh, yeah, that's the type of thing that happens in films. But wow, it just happened to me. Not a nice situation. Guy comes in, sits opposite me, puts a newspaper down, says to me in broken English and very short sentence, "You have motorbike?" And I went, yeah. And he said, "My motorbike." My motorbike? No, my motorbike. Making it very clear that it was probably no longer my motorbike. So I've got a nasty situation. I don't know what this guy's going to do. Maybe they've had lots of scary moments, but this one was perhaps the one that was physically closest to me, because he was right in my face. And he lifted his newspaper, and this is where the scene from a film would normally be, and under his newspaper is a gun. So when I look back, I think I was reasonably calm, but I think I was only reasonably calm because I had no choice. I didn't know what was going to happen. It was obviously very threatening, and it didn't even occur to me to stand up in this tiny little coffee shop and make a fuss or something like that. You're just completely and utterly out of your comfort zone. You haven't got a clue what's going to happen. The guy who served me the coffee then comes over and starts screaming and bawling at me in Russian. He knew I was English because when I went in and ordered the coffee, he clocked that I was English. Didn't speak English as far as I knew, but he thought it was quite unique that this guy had stopped and had a cup of coffee and was all the way from England. And he started shouting at me. No idea what he was on about, flinging his arms in the air, ranting and raving. Eventually he gets hold of my shoulder and literally just pulls me away, boomf, out. And more or less, not physically, but more or less throws me out the building, closes the door as I left. In that split second, I run across the road, back into my hotel. Okay, don't say much about this. I just go to my room and I just think, okay, take a bit of a deep breath here. I remember thinking quite clearly, maybe this would be a good day to leave at 5 a.m. Let's just get some sleep now. 5 o'clock in the morning, maybe I should just crawl out of bed, get on the bike and just go. Nobody around, whatever. I didn't do that. I decided that I would stay for breakfast, so I had my breakfast. And then the owner of the hotel, or manager, whatever he was, came over to me and he said, what happened yesterday? And I said, yeah. I went to a coffee shop, blah, 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 blah. And I said, I don't really know. And he said, I can tell you what happened. So I said, wow. And he said, yeah. He said, the owner of the coffee shop came over and explained to me what had happened. And the owner of the coffee shop had seen the guy with the gun and had come over to me shouting that I hadn't paid for my coffee, which I had, by the way. That didn't make any difference to me because it was all in Russian and I didn't understand. But that was his reason and his excuse to get me out of there. How about that one? It was a good story because he saved my neck, that guy, in every sense and shape and form, without me having a clue what was going on. How about that? So I had my breakfast, jumped on the bike, left that town, not a place I would ever go back to. That was... I was aware when I booked in because the owner of the guest house was so quick to get me to move the bike round the back. It was obvious. And probably at that moment, I probably just said, do you know what? I won't stay here and I'll move on. Anyway, okay, fine. I then go and head off to Togliatti. And I'm going to stay in Togliatti with a retired speedway rider who is Russian, lives in Russia with his wife in Togliatti, but he also rode in UK. And he was put in, I didn't know him at all, but he was put in contact with me through a mutual friend, a speedway rider in UK. So I had this contact. So I contacted him and said, right, I'll be in Togliatti tomorrow. Very, very good. He gave me an address where he lives. And this was an interesting one as well. This was very interesting, actually. He lived on about the 5th floor of a 7th floor block of apartments. When you got in his apartment, absolutely beautiful. But the area was very much like you would expect, really, from a working communist city. Big flats everywhere. But when I got there, parked my motorbike, found the right block where he lived, went upstairs, knocked on the door, introduced everybody. He said, yeah, okay. He said, right, we're immediately going to get rid of your motorbike. He said, we can't leave it there. So, all right, okay, fine. So I followed him and we got a secure garage somewhere for the bike, and then we came back in his car. And I'm then standing on his balcony looking out to a nice playground area, size of a football pitch, really, with children's swings and families all playing around. And this was 6 o'clock in the afternoon, somewhere, early evening or whatever. And I said, wow, I said, that's nice to see. I said, real community. Nobody's playing on computers here. All these kids are playing out. And he said, okay. He said, yeah, I'll agree with that. He said, but you won't recognise it in 3 or 4 hours from now. I won't recognise it? Okay, fine. Didn't really understand that. Sure enough, 3 or 4 hours later, 10 o'clock at night, and it is taken over by prostitutes, drug addicts. It's like 2 places in one. And it was sparky. You really knew the atmosphere down there. You could sense and taste the atmosphere of what you were looking down on. It suddenly became a very, very different place. 6 o'clock the following morning, it's all cleared up, it's all tidied up, and it becomes a family place again. I've never, anywhere on the planet that I've been to, I've never known any transformation of one place like that. And he told me, he said, yep, he said, they're using needles, they're using everything down there, drugs, everything's going on. He said, but, he said, everyone tidies up, or somebody is tidying up for everyone. He said, when we walk around there in the daytime, he said, you will not come across a needle or any sign of what has happened the previous evening. And yet, looking from that balcony, you could see what was happening. It was quite an amazing sight. So that was Taliati. Making Russia sound a bad place. It's not. It's very interesting. And the more places you go to away from the big cities, it's absolutely fascinating. And as I said to you before, the people, the civilians, lovely, lovely, lovely people. The next story involves actually the army. They were interesting story ahead. Okay, so I'm riding along. We all know as a biker, when you're riding along, you see other bikers coming the opposite direction. We're all friends. We all wave to each other. There are exceptions. Exceptions to that rule involve biker gangs. So, for example, when I was in Norway once, I came across a group called the Norwegian Coffin Cheaters. The Norwegian Coffin Cheaters. They weren't friendly. They weren't friendly bikers. Didn't do me any harm, but they weren't waving and they weren't friendly, okay? They were just their gang or whatever they are. So I'm coming along towards Siberia and miles away from anywhere, really. And I'm on you can't really call it a dual carriageway because it was a bit of grass in the middle of the road. But it's 2 lanes, one way, 2 lanes the other way. I'm tootling along 2 lanes. And a biker gang the other way, about 15 of them, rough, old Ural bikes, most of them. Coming the other way, not waving. So you become aware. You're not an idiot. You don't wave to them. You just keep your head down and keep going. But you know full well that the fact that they've not been friendly to you, you're aware of what they are. So you carry on. So suddenly I'm looking at my wing mirrors all the time. Mirrors, 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 constantly aware that there's a chance that they're going to turn back round and chase. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And what will have happened, I'm pretty sure, is I've been a lone biker on my own, tootling along, and they probably carried on another half mile or so, thinking perhaps I'm with other people that are going to catch me up, and there's a group of us or whatever. And then they realise, no, he's just on his own. And I'm on an expensive bike, so they don't. I'm sure that they didn't want to cause me any injury, but they want the bike. So, you become very aware. Now, a Honda Africa Twin is a quick bike. It's 1,000cc and it'll motor. It'll do really good speeds. But this was a rough road. And a road that, it's not just rough, concrete road, very rough, potholes everywhere. But I don't know the road as well. So that makes you even more cautious because, yes, I was aware that I was getting chased by a biker gang, but I was also aware that if I wasn't too clever, if I wasn't too careful, by the way, I'd come off the bike anyway, just down a pothole. So you go in as fast as you can, but in other circumstances, if it was a nice, smooth road, that Africa Twin would have left them big style. They're on these big old bikes, which will bounce through potholes, plus they know the roads. So they weren't catching me and I wasn't losing them. And that was stress in itself. So there's, guesswork, half a mile between the two of us, somewhere around there. I'm not losing them. They're not gaining on me. Thankfully, I've got almost a full tank of fuel, so I'm aware that I can keep going. And in Russia, what often happens is you'll come across a town or a village, perhaps a village, better example. Either the police will have a roadblock or the army will have a roadblock, and they will ask, where are you going, who are you, what are you doing? And as a tourist, they can be pretty tough questions, and I've had it before. It only ever happened to me once, where a roadblock happened with the police, and they actually said, "No, you're not coming through. You turn round." I don't know what they didn't want me to see, but it was something, and they just said, "No, you're turning around and you're going back." And I had to go back a long way round to get to the other side of this town. Anyway, on this particular occasion, I'm coming flying along, doing well over 100 mile per hour, which is well in excess of the speed limits. And suddenly, there's an army barracks there. The army have closed the road off. I thought, oh God, it was a little bit of me's thinking, I think I'd rather meet up with the army than the lot that's behind me. But another part of me is thinking, I'm speeding, what's going to happen here? And in fairness, this was one of those magical moments for me where I stopped, and immediately the first army guy that came over to me sussed what was happening, looked over my shoulder. I hardly had to point it out to him. These lot stopped, turned round and headed back the other way, and he just simply patted me on the back and said, "Go, go, go." And so that was a nice moment where the army properly looked after me. So there you go. I would be the last person that would put you off trying any of the countries, including Russia and Ukraine and wherever, the crazier ones that I've been to. I would never dream of putting anyone off doing them on their own. I would, if I wasn't married now, I would go on my own and do the same trips again. However, I would not do those trips with my wife. And there's two reasons. Number one, they are relatively dangerous, so therefore I don't want to put her in danger at all. And number two, she's a pillion. And there are times when you need to just get out of a situation riding as fast as you can. And those are the moments when you are grateful you're on your own. You haven't got any other responsibilities. You haven't got anything else to worry about. You just get out of the situation. So there you go. Hope you're finding these things interesting. And as I said to you then, the last thing I want to do is put you off. I'm not trying to put you off. I'm trying to tell you that all these experiences I had, good and bad, and some of the ones that were bad, I took risks. I was single at the time. I didn't really care what the consequences were. Of course, I've been lucky. I think I've been streetwise as well. I don't think it's all luck. I think I've kept away from certain situations where I wasn't comfortable, and one or two situations, through no fault of my own, they just happened, and fortunately I got out of them. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed what I think is now the 7th programme in this series. So there you go. We're flying through them week by week. Again, please send us a comment. Please tell us if you're enjoying it. If you're not enjoying it, keep it to yourself. You don't need to spread bad stuff. I don't say nasty things about you. You don't say nasty things about me. We're all happy. Cheers.